They said students who entered the school washroom never came back until one boy did. What returned wasn't just a survivor. It was the next thing the washroom was waiting for. The bell rang sharply at exactly 1:30 p.m., echoing through the narrow corridors of St. Holloway School. Students poured out of classrooms, laughing, shouting, pushing one another as they rushed toward the cafeteria. Everyone moved fast, everyone except Ion. Ion stood frozen near the end of the hallway, his eyes fixed on the old washroom door. It was at the far corner of the building, past the science lab that no one used anymore. The door was different from all the others, darker, swollen with age, its paint peeling like dead skin. Above it, the faded sign still read Boys' Washroom, though no one remembered the last time it was cleaned or used. People said students who entered that washroom never came back. Ion had always laughed at the rumors. Ghost stories, whispers passed from batch to batch to scare juniors. But today was different. His stomach twisted painfully, cold sweat forming on his forehead. He really needed to go. Just use another washroom. His friend Hamza had warned him earlier. Not that one, but the nearest other washroom was 2 floors down, and the pain in Ion's gut was becoming unbearable. The hallway was now empty. Lunch break meant silence. Here an uncomfortable, heavy silence. The lights flickered. Ion swallowed hard and stepped closer to the door. That was when he heard it. A soft knock, not from outside. From inside the washroom. Ion's breath caught in his throat. His hand hovered inches away from the rusted handle. The knock came again slow. Deliberate. Knock. 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 Hello, Ion whispered before he could stop himself. Silence. Then, faintly, a voice drifted through the door. Help. Please. It sounded like a boy. Young, terrified. Ion's heart began to race. His mind screamed at him to run, to turn around and never look back. But his feet refused to move. The voice sounded familiar. Disturbingly familiar. Who's there? He asked, his voice shaking. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the washroom was darker than it should have been. The air thick with a foul, damp smell. The mirrors were cracked, reflecting warped versions of the hallway lights. Water dripped endlessly from a broken tap, each drop sounding unnaturally loud. And then Ion saw the writing on the mirror, scratched deep into the glass with what looked like fingernails. Don't enter. IT won't let you leave. The door slammed shut behind him. Ion screamed. Ion screamed, but the sound felt wrong, muffled, as if the washroom was swallowing it whole. He spun around and grabbed the door handle, twisting it wildly. It didn't move. The metal felt scald, burning his skin. He banged on the door with both fists, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. Open. Someone, open the door, he cried. But the hallway outside remained silent, lifeless. Slowly, the lights above him began to flicker. One bulb went out. Then another. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the stained tiles, crawling up the walls like living things. Ion backed away from the door, his shoes splashing into a thin layer of dirty water on the floor. The dripping tap suddenly stopped, and the silence that followed was far worse. From one of the toilet stalls came the sound of breathing. Not fast, not slow, just waiting. Ion's eyes locked onto the stall door at the far end. The paint on it was scratched and peeling, and at the bottom, he could see a pair of feet. Bare, pale, completely still. Who are you? Ion whispered, barely able to breathe. The stall door creaked open, inch by inch. A boy stepped out toward. At least, what looked like a boy. He wore a school uniform identical to Ion's, but it was soaked dark with old stains. His face was unnaturally pale, eyes sunk in deep into their sockets. When Ion noticed his lips were cracked and bleeding. You can, the boy said softly. That means I can leave. Ion shook his head, stepping back until his shoulders hit the cold wall. What are you talking about? Who are you? The boy tilted his head in an unnatural way. "I was you. Once?" The mirrors around the washroom began to shake violently. Cracks spread across the glass, and in every reflection, Ion didn't see himself anymore. He saw dozens of students crying, screaming, clawing at the walls. Their mouths were open, but no sound came out. The boy took a step closer. "They said I'd be fine," he continued, his voice hollow. "They said it was just a washroom." The lights went out completely. In the darkness, Ion felt a cold hand wrap around his wrist, and then he heard the bell ring again. This time, it was inside his head. The bell's echo faded, replaced by a low humming sound that vibrated through Ion's bones. He tried to pull his hand away, but the grip tightened, fingers digging into his skin like hooks. The darkness felt thick, almost solid, pressing against his chest and making it hard to breathe. He could smell something rotten, mixed with the sharp scent of rust and old blood. A faint light flickered back on. Ion found himself standing in front of the mirror again, but the reflection wasn't his anymore. It showed the washroom filled with students, shoulder to shoulder, their faces pale and empty. Some were crying silently. Others stared straight ahead, eyes wide with madness. Written over their reflections, again and again, was a single word scratched into the glass. Stay. The boy still held Ion's wrist. Up close, Ion noticed the boy's skin looked stretched, as if it didn't belong to him. Dark veins crawled up his neck, pulsing slowly. "It doesn't like to be alone," the boy whispered. "So it keeps us." Ion shook his head violently. "I won't stay. I'm leaving." The boy smiled wider, and his teeth looked wrong too many. Too sharp. "Everyone says that." Suddenly, the toilet stalls burst open, one by one. From inside each stall, hands reached out, dozens of hands scratching at the floor, the walls, the air. Some hands were small, like children's. Others were broken, twisted at impossible angles. The sound of nails scraping tile filled the room, sharp enough to make Ion scream. "Take him!" A voice growled from everywhere at once. The floor beneath Ion's feet grew soft, sinking slightly, like wet flesh. He stumbled forward, barely keeping his balance. The walls began to close in, tiles cracking and bending inward. The washroom was shrinking, breathing. Ion ripped his hand free and ran. He didn't know where he was. When the door had vanished, every direction looked the same now, mirrors repeating endlessly, each reflection showing a different version of his fear. In one mirror, he saw himself older, hollow-eyed, scratching words into the glass. In another, he saw Hamza standing outside the washroom, calling his name, unaware of what waited inside. Ion slammed his fists against a mirror. Eat. Crack. From the crack, a black liquid began to leak out, dripping onto the floor. The liquid moved on its own, crawling toward his feet like a living shadow. As it touched his shoe, a freezing pain shot up his leg, and whispers filled his ears. "You belong here. You never left. You never will." Ion screamed again, louder than before. And somewhere deep within the walls of the washroom, something laughed. The laughter echoed again, deeper this time, like it was coming from beneath the floor. Ion staggered backward, his legs shaking as the black liquid spread faster, climbing the tiles and creeping up the walls. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, until he couldn't tell where one voice ended and another began. They sounded hungry, impatient. The mirrors suddenly went dark, not cracked, not broken, just black, like windows into nothing. From one of them, a shape slowly pushed forward, stretching the surface outward as if the mirror were made of rubber. A hand emerged, first long fingers, joints bending the wrong way. Then a face pressed against the glass from the inside. No eyes, no nose, just a wide, torn mouth that slowly opened. "Your turn," it hissed. Ion felt something tug at his backpack. He spun around and saw more students standing behind him now. Dozens of Tim blocking every path. Their uniforms were torn, their faces exhausted, eyes filled with silent pleading. One girl grabbed his sleeve, her grip weak but desperate. "Don't fight it," she whispered. "The more you fight, the longer you stay. What is it? Ion cried. Why is it doing this? The students exchanged terrified glances. It feeds on fear, one boy said. And on replacements. The floor cracked open with a wet sound. A dark gap spread beneath Ion's feet, and from inside it came the same voice he had heard earlier. The one that had begged for help. Only now it sounded pleased. Stay, it said softly, or take their place. Ion's heart pounded as he looked at the trapped students, then at the black mirror, then at the empty doorway that suddenly appeared behind the crowd. Light spilled through it, warm, normal, real. He could hear the cafeteria noise again. Laughter. Life. Freedom. But as he stepped toward the light, the students began to scream not loudly, but in pain. Their bodies started to fade, like smoke being pulled backward. No, Ion shouted, stopping himself. The voice laughed again. Choose. The light flickered. The door began to close, and the washroom walls started whispering his name. Ion clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms until he felt blood. The whispers grew frantic, chanting his name over and over, as if the washroom itself was alive and begging him to surrender. The doorway of light shrank, its edges trembling, while the trapped students reached out to him, their faces twisting in agony as their bodies continued to fade. I won't do it, Ion shouted, his voice cracking. I won't replace anyone. For the first time, the washroom went silent. The black mirror began to pulse, the surface rippling like water. From it emerged a tall, twisted figure, far larger than any human. Its body was stitched together from shadows, its limbs too long, its head scraping the ceiling. Where its face should have been was a mass of mouths, each one whispering, begging, screaming. Then you will stay, it said in 1,000 voices. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost spread across the mirrors and tiles, creeping toward Ion's feet. The students collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads, as if the creature's presence was crushing them. Ion felt his vision blur, his breath coming out in short, painful gasps. Then he remembered something. Hamza's words from that morning echoed in his head. No one ever comes back. But that wasn't entirely true. Ion noticed something carved faintly near the sink, almost hidden beneath layers of grime. He stumbled toward it, ignoring the pain shooting through his legs. The words were old, scratched by a trembling hand. The door opens when Itia seen Ion turn slowly toward the creature. He raised his head and looked straight at it. The whispers turned into screams. The creature recoiled, its shadowy form shuddering violently. The mirrors began to crack all at once, lights spilling through the fractures. The black liquid on the floor hissed and evaporated like smoke. It doesn't want to be seen, Ion realized. It wants to be forgotten. The trapped students stared at him in disbelief. Ion took another step forward, refusing to look away. The creature shrieked, its many mouths stretching impossibly wide, and then it was dragged backward into the black mirror. The surface shattered, exploding into fragments of darkness that dissolved in the air. The doorway of light burst open. The bell rung, this time real, loud, and clear. Ion felt himself falling forward, and then he was lying on the cold hallway floor, outside the washroom. Students rushed past him, laughing, shouting, stepping around his body without noticing him at first. The normal sounds of school filled his ears. The washroom door behind him was old and quiet again, just a door. Ion slowly sat up. On his wrist were dark, finger-shaped bruises, and on the washroom door, freshly scratched into the wood, were 3 words. We see you.
Years later, as an adult, Ayan became a teacher, convincing himself that the past was finally buried. But on his very first day at a new school, during a quiet tour of endless hallways, echoing classrooms, and dim laboratories, he felt that familiar chill crawl up his spine when he saw it at the far end of the building, a door. Old and peeling, its paint cracked like dried skin, exactly the way he remembered. Above it, a faded sign read Washroom. The principal noticed and frowned. That washroom's been locked for years, he said casually. Strange thing is, no one remembers why. The words hit Ayan harder than any scream. He stared at the door, his reflection faintly visible in its dark surface, lingering just a second too long. Then it happened. From the other side came a knock, slow, deliberate. Once, twice. Each sound echoed through the hallway like a heartbeat. The lights flickered violently and the air grew cold. Ayan closed his eyes for a moment, knowing with sick certainty that it had never left, it had only waited. He exhaled shakily, straightened his tie with trembling fingers, and stepped forward as the knocking continued, louder now, impatient. Because some doors never truly close, some horrors are never destroyed, and some students are not meant to return but to come back and stand guard forever.